Let it go, let it go. I can't hold it back anymore. Yo, what's up everybody? This is Junior Chicken here, counting down my top 10 favorite Ice-type Pokemon. Ice-type Pokemon are the rarest type in terms of Pokemon in the Pokemon games. Mainly because the Ice-type Pokemon are usually designed after physical ice concepts or creatures that you find in sub-zero climates, such as mountains or Arctic or Antarctic regions. There's also mythological creatures that are thrown in here and there that are ice types too, and there aren't that many cold climates within many of the regions that the Pokemon games take place in. Ice type attacks usually involve harnessing physical ice to throw at enemies, or unleashing cold weather climates such as snowy and windy weather conditions. There's also the hail weather, which is beneficial for ice types, and a few ice status moves that often involve stat changes. I remember in the first two generations, I was puzzled by the fact that all Ice-type Pokemon had a secondary typing. But later on in life, I would realize why. Ice-type Pokemon only resist their own type of attacks. And they have 4 pretty bad weaknesses, those being Fire, Fighting, Rock, and Steel. On top of that, Ice-type attacks are not strong against water types, which to me doesn't make sense because water turns into ice when it's put in a cold environment. So what's so great about the ice type then? Well, ice type attacks are super effective against some of the most abundant and powerful types out there. Ice type attacks are super effective against grass types, ground types, flying types, and the overpowered dragon type. So you can see why ice moves can be fairly handy. Now I'll be honest with you, the ice type is one of my least favorite types, but there's still plenty of Pokemon that can show that the ice type is pretty cool in fact. With how rare the ice type is, there's only 21 fully evolved ice types that I can put on this countdown. So putting half of those Pokemon on this countdown was a bit of a struggle. Once again, these are my favorite Ice-type Pokemon based on their concept and design, move pool, stat distribution, cool ability, etc. With that being said, let's get to it with my top 10 favorite Ice-type Pokemon. When it comes to Ice-type Pokemon in the competitive scene, Mamoswine is pretty much the most prominent. It was a great additional evolution added in Generation 4, mainly because Swinub and Piloswine were pretty boring Pokemon. Now teach Piloswine Ancient Power, and you get a pretty menacing looking Mammoth, with a solid 530 base stat total, including high HP and attack. Granted, it is fairly weak in the special defense department, and its ice ground typing means that it's weak to all 3 of the starter types, as well as fighting and steel attacks. Unless you get the thick bat ability, there are 2 things that Mamoswine is pretty good at. The first being setting up rocks, and the second is keeping dragons in check. This is mainly due to its move Ice Shard, which is a priority Ice-type move it learns from its pre-evolutions. Being a ground type, it can also learn EQ, which can be effective for wrecking a lot of the opponents on the field, and it can learn Ice Fang naturally. Other than that, it can learn some normal attacks as well as some Rock TMs, Bite, Avalanche, and Icicle Crash through breeding, and Knock Off, Superpower, and Iron Head through the Move Tutor. Doesn't have much to really take care of water and fighting type Pokemon. Despite that, it is still a Pokemon that can stay strong and destroy enemies long after the end of the Ice Age. It seems that the Pokemon designs based off of inanimate objects are the ones that get the most petty criticism to them. And Vanillux is the prime example. I mean, seriously, what's so bad about an ice cream Pokemon? I love ice cream, don't you? Seriously, are you Gen 1ers like lactose intolerant or something? Okay, it's not just the Gen 1ers, but there's definitely more to this Pokemon than its ice cream cone design. It works really well in the hail, being able to heal HP or dodge attacks during a hailstorm thanks to its abilities. And its hidden ability, Weak Armor, can turn it into more of a sweeper when it's hit by physical attacks. Did I mention that its stats are also pretty well rounded and balanced, including its 110 special attack? Speaking of special attacks, Vanillix has plenty of ice special attacks that it can use, including Blizzard, Ice Beam, Icy Wind, Freeze Dry, and Frost Breath, which always crits. It's also got Mirror Shot and Flash Cannon to take care of some rock types, Water Pulse through Breeding, which will take care of fire types, and Signal Beam through the Move Tutor. It can even learn some Hidden Power and Weather Ball to add some unpredictability, and Autotomize, which can boost its speed by 2 stages. Now, if only this Pokemon could learn Calm Mind, then it would probably be much higher on my favorites. Yeah, don't mess with this double scoop ice cream cone, or else you're gonna get brain freeze.
There's a resisted more than half. That is ridiculous.
Glalie is quite a scary Pokemon, a major advancement from Snorunt. Snorunt is a Pokemon you usually see shivering when you encounter it in the wild, fairly vulnerable and afraid. Then it evolves into Glalie, a 5-foot ice head with an intimidating glare. It also likes to freeze its prey solid and eat it in a leisurely fashion. In terms of base stats, it's basically the same as Fione, 80 across the board for each stat. Sure, it's got some pretty useful abilities in Ice Body, Inner Focus, and its hidden ability Moody, which is a bit more chance-based as I mentioned before with Octillery. Unfortunately, these stats mean it's usually put up in an explosion roll in double battles, which can be pretty satisfying to pull off, taking out 2 Pokemon while leaving one of yours intact, but I like to explore a lot more when it comes to Glalie. Considering that it has balanced attack and special attack, you can give it a variety of moves if you'd like. For physical attacks, you can give it Ice Fang and Ice Shard for stab, as well as Earthquake and Bulldoze, Gyro Ball, Crunch, and Payback. For special attacks, you'll get stuff like Icy Wind, Freeze Dry, Blizzard, Ice Beam of course, as well as Shadow Ball and Dark Pulse through TMs, Hex and Weather Ball through Breeding, and Water Pulse through the Move Tutor. There's also Taunt, Torment, and Switcheroo if you want some utility out of it, as well as Spikes to set up entry hazards. Despite that its moves can cover quite a few weaknesses, it still leaves a bit more to be desired. A lot of times I wonder why Glalie isn't an Ice Dark type, especially with access to Dark type moves, and easily having a design that could pass for a Dark type. That's why it's only a number 8, even though I took it with me to the Elite Four in Omega Ruby. But as I've said before, it is terrifying. So I was talking about how Glalie should be an Ice Dark type. Well, what do you know? I'm going to be talking about an Ice Dark type right now. When it comes to additional evolutions in Generation 4, most people point to this Pokemon to show how awesome they were, Weavile. Weavile is a solid physical sweeper with high attack and speed, meaning it will outspeed a lot of Pokemon while hitting very hard in return. Unfortunately, it does have a pretty weak physical defense at 65, as well as 6 weaknesses, including Fairy, Bug, and a 4x weakness to the fighting type. A Mach Punch could easily destroy this thing. It's almost mandatory for a Weavile to hold a Focus Sash if you want to use it competitively. Thankfully, its abilities are somewhat helpful. Pressure increases the opponent's power point usage, and Pickpocket can steal items from Pokemon that hit Weavile. Weavile can learn a ton of dark physical attacks, but needs to be bred in order to learn most of its ice physical attacks. It learns Ice Shard through pre-evolution, and needs to be bred in order to learn Ice Punch and Icicle Crash. Despite that, it still has plenty of type coverage with fighting type attacks like Brick Break, Low Sweep, and Power Up Punch through TMs, Shadow Claw, X Scizor, Poison Jab, and Metal Claw, as well as some utility with Taunt, Embargo, and Snatch, which can steal an opponent's status move. It also can learn Hone Claws to boost its attack and accuracy to hit harder with less accurate moves.
Its pre-evolution Sneasel was already a pretty big fan favorite in the second generation, but all you need to do to make it more awesome is level it up with a Razor Claw at 9.
Now you would think combining the Dragon type with the Ice type would bring you something pretty incredible. And in Generation 5 we got just that with Kyurem. Now Kyurem was pretty awesome, but still didn't quite hold a candle to its other two counterparts. It wasn't until the sequels came around that we got something really interesting to do with Kyurem.
The DNA Splicer's ability to fuse two legendary Pokemon together to improve Kyurem was quite the game changer. And seeing that I prefer Zekrom over Reshiram, it only makes sense that I prefer Black Kyurem over White Kyurem. Unfortunately, I won't have a lot to talk about since Kyurem does operate very similar to Zekrom. They both have the Teravolt ability. Both of them have very similar base stat totals, even though Black Kyurem has higher physical attack. And both have pretty much the same move pools, except Kyurem doesn't have access to electric attacks other than Fusion Bolt. The only big difference is that Black Kyurem can't learn Bolt Strike, but instead learns Freeze Shock, a powerful ice-type attack that can cause paralysis, but requires you to wait a turn before you use it. Isn't the best thing in competitive battles, and it's the only ice physical attack it can learn. All its other ice moves are special, and it only has 3 physical Dragon-type attacks, those being Outrage, Dragon Claw, and Dragon Tail. Sure, you can teach it Steel Wing or Iron Head to take care of rocks and fairies, but other than that, its type coverage is meh-ish at best. Then again, it's still a legendary Pokemon with great power and the same symbolism as Zekrom, so can't complain too much. In a previous countdown, I talked about how Grass and Poison is a common type pairing in the Pokemon games. Well, so is Water and Ice. They both seem to complement each other pretty well. Case in point, Cloyster. Cloyster is a Pokemon with a hard-ass shell, which gives it a whopping 180 physical defense. It also has the ability Shell Armor to protect it from critical hits. Unfortunately, it does have a very low special defense to compensate, but at least with its Water and Ice typing, its stabs can cover 2 of its own weaknesses. Cloyster has some pretty good utility since it can set up spikes and toxic spikes, and can boost its ridiculous physical defense even higher with Withdrawal, Barrier, and Iron defense. Of course, it has a wide range of physical and special Water and Ice type attacks, along with some quirky type coverage with moves like Poison Jab and Payback through TMs, Mud Shot and Rock Blast through Breeding, and Signal Beam through the Move Tutor once again. Before Generation 5, Cloyster was usually a victim of explosion fodder, just like Glalie. But then Generation 5 introduced Shell Smash, and holy crap did this Pokemon become OP as bloody hell. Now having the ability to boost its attack, special attack, and speed at the exchange of some defense, on top of having the Skill Link ability and access to Icicle Spear and Rock Blast, Cloyster can become a terrifying sweeper that can break through substitutes and focus sashes like it's nothing. Not even Mimikyu is safe. If you see a Cloyster get knocked down to its sash and then it uses Shell Smash, you better hope that you have some priority moves on your Pokemon. And even then, most of the priority moves are physical, and Cloyster will still have some pretty good defense after that Shell Smash. If you don't have Vacuum Wave on your team, there's a very thin chance you'll be able to survive a disgusting sweep from this Pokemon.
I gotta say, the Dawnstone is probably my favorite evolution stone. It can take a Pokemon of a specific gender and make it even more interesting than what it would have been if you just leveled it up. And I think you know where I'm going with this one now, don't you?
Sure, Glalie may be a fairly intimidating and cool Pokemon, but Frostlass ultimately is more interesting and creepy. Of course, it's a ghost type, so it has to be creepy in a way. Also, it pulls off Japanese folklore way better than Jinx does. And the Pokedex entries talk about how it's a reincarnation of a woman who died in the icy mountains. How it freezes its prey solid and displays them in its den as decoration. And in Moon it says it feeds off the souls of men. Now this is the Yandere Pokemon right here. Stat-wise, it has lower HP, defense, and special defense, but faster speed, keeping a solid 480 base stat total. And with the addition of the Ghost typing, it's completely immune to fighting attacks while acquiring the Ghost and Dark weakness. It also has the hidden ability Cursed Body, which can shut down a Pokemon's physically contacting move. You'll definitely want to use special attacks with Frostlass, since it's fairly limited when it comes to its physical move pool. I mean, all it has for stabs are Ice Shard, Ice Punch, and Avalanche, as well as Wake Up Slap, Payback, and Roll Out for some type coverage, but its special moves are just better. It's got Icy Wind, Ice Beam, and Blizzard for ice stabs, as well as Ominous Wind, Shadow Ball, and Hex for ghost stabs. It can also learn Hidden Power Psychic and Thunderbolt through TMs, Weather Ball through breeding, and Water Pulse and Signal Beam through the move tutor. As a ghost type though, of course it can throw some tricks around, with moves like Captivate to lower the special attack of male Pokemon, Destiny Bond to take down opponents, Confuse Rate for confusion, Taunt to prevent status moves, Switcheroo to switch items around, and Spikes for setting up entry hazards. If you see this Pokemon on an icy mountain, just run. It's not worth the pain you're about to suffer if this thing catches you. Polar bears are freaking dangerous, and Beartic is no exception. It has a base attack of 130, making it a hard-hitting physical attacker, despite its speed being only 50. It has some good abilities to boost its speed during weather conditions. It got Slush Rush in Generation 7, allowing it to boost its speed in a hailstorm. It's also got Snow Cloak, which allows it to dodge attacks in a hailstorm. And it has the hidden ability Swift Swim, allowing it to boost its speed in the rain. Sure, its natural move pool isn't too interesting. The only stab physical attack it learns is Icicle Crash, and it mainly learns normal physical attacks. But it can also learn Aqua Jet, a priority water type move to take care of weaknesses, and Superpower. It can also learn Ice Punch and Avalanche through breeding to give you more stabs, as well as Focus Punch, Night Slash, Assurance, and Play Rough. Yes, it has fighting type coverage. It also has some pretty great TMs under its belt, including Brick Break, Power Up Punch, Dig, Bulldoze, Rock Slide, Stone Edge, Shadow Claw, and Return. Of course, it can boost its attack even higher with Hone Claws, Bulk Up, and Swords Dance. Give it Substitute, and you'll be able to pull off some pretty awesome focus punches, taking care of some strong rock and steel types. Did I mention that this thing can use its breath to freeze pathways across the water? Polar bears are freaking awesome. Aw man, Aurorus is a beautiful Pokemon. Some people may prefer the other Kalos fossil Pokemon, but I have to say, Aurorus is probably one of my favorite fossil Pokemon. Sure, it may have a rock and ice typing that isn't that good since it has 6 weaknesses now, as well as deadly weaknesses to fighting and steel attacks, but there's more to Aurorus than just its typing. It's got some pretty good HP as well as an okay special attack stat, and although it's slow, it has 2 pretty solid abilities. With Refrigerate, it can turn normal attacks into ice type attacks, and considering it can learn Hyper Voice that can break subs, you can see why this is pretty useful. But it also has the hidden ability Snow Warning, which creates a hailstorm every time you send Aurorus into battle. Eat your heart out, Obama Snow. And while the only special rock type attack it can learn is Ancient Power, it has plenty of ice type moves up its sleeve, including Icy Wind, Aurora Beam, Ice Beam, Blizzard, and Freeze Dry, which takes care of water, grass, and ground types. In fact, that's the main reason I like Aurorus. It introduced the move Freeze Dry, which is actually super effective against water types, allowing you to take care of plenty of water types that would regularly be neutral to ice attacks. And Hidden Power isn't its only type coverage either. It can learn Dark Pulse, Thunderbolt, Psychic to take care of fighting types, Flash Cannon for rock types, Discharge through breeding, and Earth Power through the Move Tutor, allowing you to take care of rock and steel type Pokemon. It's even got Mirror Coat for reflecting special attacks, as well as Calm Mind to boost its special attack and special defense even higher, Rock Polish to boost its low speed and turn it into a sweeper, and of course, Stealth Rocks for entry hazards. It may not look like a big threat on the battlefield, but give it the weakness policy and you'll give your opponent something to really fear. Sure, the weak typing is the reason why Aurorus is not number 1, but I can't help but appreciate what Aurorus brought in the 6th generation with Freeze Dry.
Looks like we got our first repeat Pokemon on these countdowns. I talked about this Pokemon in my top 10 favorite water types countdown, and I ranked it relatively low on the countdown, but considering how underwhelming ice types are, it just happened to land at number 1. I think you know the rest now.
So now I have to talk about why Lapras is my favorite ice type Pokemon. And I've already talked about Lapras before in my water types countdown, so it shouldn't be too difficult. With a higher HP stat and more balanced attack and defense stats than Aurorus, and a more solid typing, it's one of those Pokemon that can be fairly reliable in battles. Shell Armor protects it from critical hits, Water Absorb allows it to recover health from water attacks, and Hydration allows it to stay healthy in the rain. And while this Pokemon was hunted to near extinction, it still shows a kind heart to other humans, and serves as a great mode of transportation. That's why it was a ride Pokemon in Generation 7 games. And unlike Cloyster, Lapras has a pretty wide range of type coverage, with plenty of powerful water type attacks including Surf, Waterfall, and Hydro Pump, to ice moves like Blizzard, Ice Beam, and Ice Shard. And let's not forget Freeze Dry too, it can learn that through breeding. As for type coverage, you got Thunderbolt and Psychic through TMs, as well as Bulldoze and Hidden Power. There's also Dragon Pulse, Future Sight, and Ancient Power through breeding, and plenty of other moves through the Move Tutor, including Outrage, Iron Head, Drill Run, Zen Headbutt, and Signal Beam. It also has a few tactics up its sleeve like Confuse Ray and Perish Song, as well as Safeguard to protect from status effects. If you really want to turn this Pokemon into a sweeper though, you can teach it Dragon Days, boosting its attack and speed and turning it into quite a formidable force with the right moves in its arsenal. Sure, Lapras might not be as hardcore as some of the number 1s on my previous countdowns, it is still a worthwhile Pokemon to have on your team. So please, don't give it the cold shoulder.
Oddly enough, because I go for Freeze Dry, that's a dead death to the kid. I'm sure. Okay, I got scared. I was like, if this doesn't die, I might just
I think for my next Pokemon countdown, I'm going to move away from the types and try something different. With Pokemon Sun and Moon being such great games in the Pokemon series, changing up the formula, providing a really enthralling story with great characters, and a load of new, interesting, and creative Pokemon, my next countdown is going to be based on that. My top 12 favorite Alolan Pokemon.
So there you have it. Thank you for watching my Pokemon countdown. You can check out some more of my countdowns using this playlist right here in the end screen. Feel free to subscribe if you'd like to see more videos from me. Thank you again for watching, and I'll see you in my next video.